Given the mostly fast-paced parkour gameplay, the visual art of Mirror's Edge is easy to pass off using the simplest of terms. Something along the lines of, say, oh, it's just shiny tall buildings and block colours, with red clearly defining what structures can and can't be climbed. Oh, and simple colour palettes gives a different feel to different chunks of the environment. That would be a really oversimplistic assessment. But if you take a slow sightseeing approach to the gameplay, then you start to find that there's a lot more conceptual depth to this game's art style. The colour red is mostly reserved for the player's runner vision, of course, but I don't think red was picked out of a hat for that purpose. Red is a colour very prominent in the human psyche. We associate it with ripe fruit, sexuality, heat, and so on. Red really stands out to us, so it's the perfect colour for runner vision. And the dominance of white in the building exteriors allows the red highlighted sections to stand out even more for gameplay clarity. But red is also the colour of blood, and in a weird little instance near the beginning of the game, there's a very rare red painted hallway. There aren't many red painted sections in the game. And this includes what I believe to be the only instance of paint spillage in the game, and it just happens to be red. When I first played the game, I mistook this for blood until I looked at the paint can with its logo of state approval. And much later in the game, if you stop and take a moment to look through the windows here in this hallway, we see an interrogation room where actual blood has been spilled. State approved drops of red again, apparently. There are multiple instances in which tins of paint have been left lying around in half-decorated locations, and always with the official approval label. I don't think I've ever seen that with a paint tin in the real world, so it appears that the colour palettes of the Mirror's Edge world serve a narrative function beyond mere gameplay practicalities. There's also a consistency throughout the city in how the colours are used. Interior locations virtually always use a single colour combined with plain white. This area is green and white, this one is yellow and white, this one blue and white, and on it goes. Very rarely do we see more than one colour mixed with white. This consistency suggests the city overseers not only decide what colours can be used, but also how and where they are used. So there are virtually no appearances of colour blending that would signify personal expression by the city inhabitants. And there are hardly ever any subtle shades of colour. It's usually primary colours or their most basic derivatives like orange or pink. But for some reason purple makes almost no appearance in the game world, and only the occasional shade of brown is present, but it's in situations where there's a half-decorated environment. Nothing is actually painted brown. And throughout this study we will occasionally be exploring very specific symbolic uses of individual colours. One perceptual effect the colour coding has is it gives the false impression of the city being very simple. The sparse patches of colour simplicity disguise the industrial, technological and legal complexity that created and maintain this city's very existence. It's like being fed only one type of food per meal, and no condiments, no seasoning. The illusion of simplicity is also present in the dominance of colourless basic geometry in the building exteriors. Most buildings are white or reflective, occasionally one might be grey or black, and the only architectural complexity we really see is the basic functional variety such as communication antennas, ventilation, or construction items and scaffolding. This forced perception of simplicity is mirrored in the tabletop models of the city. They're usually in plain white with very simple geometry. Occasionally there might be a shiny model of a specific building, but again it's simplified. So it's like the actual city has been designed to look like a tabletop model, and this is exactly what we see in the title screens of the game. We also find it in the New Eden Mall area. In front of the actual command tower, if you will, that oversees the mall building, is a surrealist model in a similar shape but oversimplified, disguising the incredible complexity of the real building and all its contained systems. An interesting comparison to make is the visual world of Blade Runner, which has dark, gothic structures full of detail. In Blade Runner, the complexity and danger of the city is on display in the basic art style. But in Mirror's Edge it's different. An illusion of simplicity masks over everything, giving the inhabitants the impression that there are no subtleties to be considered, no nuances to be explored, no complexities to be unravelled. At a casual glance, the city has the simplicity of a cartoon. Is this a willful act of intellectually watering down at the sensory level, or is it designed for an emotional calming effect so that the inhabitants don't become overwhelmed by the complex reality of the city? Actually, I think those two effects go hand in hand. However, the underlying complexity of the city inevitably surfaces from time to time in ways that are unavoidable. The presence of mysterious computer towers and occasional stacks of paperwork and filing cabinets are a giveaway of complex underlying systems. Legal forms and notices sometimes come with small print complexity, though we can't actually read it. The tube station maps especially are an unpleasant break in the feeling of easy simplicity. The Shard building, which dominates the city, is a strong example of complex systems hidden beneath a deceptively simple exterior. The reflective building is featureless apart from some surrealist slice and twist features. It's so featureless that its reflection of surrounding skies often makes it blend into the sky, much like the mysterious sky blue blocks in the surrealist artwork of Magritte. But once the player gets inside the Shard building in the final levels of the game, a massive internal network of complexity is revealed, with dozens of giant computer servers on the top floor, each processing massive amounts of complex observational data about the city and its inhabitants. And this particular piece of corporate artwork seems to show the city itself as the tip of an iceberg. The huge underground geometric shapes look like underground tunnels or bases. Going back to the subject of the building exteriors, we could think of them as like giant filing cabinets and computer towers. Simple and uninteresting colours and geometry on the outside, but extremely complex functionality on the inside. Another area where the visual simplicity gives way to complex underlying reality is environmental texture. Most surfaces in the game just look like plain blocks of smooth colour until we walk up close to them. Up close we often find rough textures such as concrete or occasionally wooden planks in undecorated areas. Block colour walls sometimes have brick patterns up close, and a lot of these textured surfaces have blemishes like dirt or tiny cracks that are only visible up close. Now, of course, the sensory simplicity that characterises much of the game world can just be taken as a way of allowing the game engine to run more quickly at smoother frame rates. That was almost certainly a factor. But we will find during our further exploration that the concept of visual deception is present on many other levels in the game, and frequently in ways that have nothing to do with how smooth the game runs. The commercial adverts scattered around the city universally follow the same simplistic colour pattern of white plus one other colour, as if they all have been designed by the exact same marketing team. The extremely basic images and slogans within those ads encourage oversimplified thinking. It's as if they are all promoting the exact same thing: stupidity. Even the City Mayor campaign ads are almost completely lacking in nuance. There is a real-world artistic parallel with all this, which I suspect is intentionally present in this game. One of the major big business entities of the story is a security firm called Pirandello Kruger. I was reading up on those two words and I came across the artwork of Barbara Kruger with the same spelling in her last name, and it instantly struck me as being incredibly similar to the advertising concepts in Mirror's Edge. Barbara Kruger's art mocks real advertising by including short, attention-grabbing slogans with basic imagery and a reduced palette of block colours, nearly always red, white and black. It seems that Mirror's Edge has taken some inspiration in how it too appears to mock the intelligence-numbing deception of blunt advertising images and slogans, and the reference to the artist Barbara Kruger has likely been slipped into the Pirandello Kruger security firm. And perhaps her influence extends to the city design itself, not just the adverts within. If Barbara Kruger wasn't an influence on this game's art design, then it's a hell of a fluke. And yes, flukes like that can happen. Barbara Kruger was a famous artist before this game was made, so the people who made the game obviously would be able to find her artwork and take inspiration. But the game was released in 2008 or 2009, I can't remember which offhand, and a prominent sign in the game accidentally refers to the 2013 revelations of a now famous person who informed the world of data gathering activities relating to the general public. But I don't see how the game designers could have known that was going to happen over 4 years in advance. However, the White Alice reference in this same sign Could be a reference to the Cold War White Alice communication systems in Alaska. I haven't looked too much into that though. Could be an accident. But it is quite specific, isn't it? What little artistic expression we see in the city is mostly of the bland and empty boardroom-approved variety. Occasionally a simple but odd architectural feature such as the Shard Tower, or a strangely shaped piece of 3D sculpture, usually in a single colour. The meaninglessness of these supposedly artistic installments ironically has a sort of hypnotic effect. People can stare at them, trance-like, wondering what it means, but it actually means very little. Just as strobe lights can assist in hypnotic induction, but they don't really mean anything either. Company logos in this game follow similar logic. Simple geometry, sometimes with a distortion that has a mild optical illusion effect that holds attention, but usually carries no particular meaning, or at least no meaning that is interesting or original. For example, this parcel delivery slogan logo graphic with a shadow design to make it pop out visually on the white surface. This stuff seems to appeal to the most low IQ base feeling response, much like the featureless flags that appear from time to time in this game world. The flags are in plain block colours, defiant of intellect in their simplicity, and yet the flags must mean something. Are they national flags, city flags, company flags? Who knows? The deception of simplistic surface appearances in this game manifests even in the weather systems. Most likely for technical performance, the skies are nearly always cloudless and the sun never moves. Light and shadow apparently aren't rendered in real time in this game. Shadows and reflections are mostly built into the world, painted onto the surfaces if you will. And this adds to the feeling that the world is lacking in animation. There's very little movement in terms of light and shadow, like the city is frozen stiff. Distant people and vehicles at the ground level are incredibly sparse as well, too sparse for a city. And this furthers the sense of this being a frozen place with not much going on. These creative choices help with the game's technical performance, of course, but they also fit with the sense of artificiality in the city. Everything from the adverts, the art installations, the lighting and weather, even the sunshine. It's all fake by design.